The message came without warning. No diplomatic request, no formal announcement, nothing that followed the rules humanity had learned during their 12 years in the Galactic Collective. Ambassador Claire Bennett stood in her office aboard Neptune Station, reading the transmission for the third time. A Xanthari royal delegation was already on approach. They would arrive within the hour. Claire pressed the communication panel on her desk. "Daniel, get up here. We have a situation." Captain Daniel Cole arrived within minutes. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and the kind of steady calm that came from 20 years of military service. He read the message and his jaw tightened. "They're not even asking permission," he said. "No, they're not." Claire moved to the window that looked out at the stars. The Xanthari Empire was one of the oldest powers in the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. "Get security ready. Full protocol. And find Dr. Torres. I want her in the meeting." The Xanthari ship was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often were. It swept into the station's docking bay like a blade made of silver and light. Claire watched from the observation deck as the ramp lowered and the delegation emerged. Prince Velon walked at the front. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed to hold no warmth at all. His robes were made of something that shifted colors as he moved. Behind him came 6 guards in armor and 2 advisors carrying data tablets. Claire met them in the diplomatic hall. She had chosen a simple black suit. No decorations, no jewelry. She wanted to look professional, not impressed. "Prince Velon," she said, offering a small bow. "We are honored by your visit, though surprised by the short notice." The prince looked around the room as if he found it disappointing. "Ambassador Bennett, I have come on a matter of great importance. A matter that concerns the future of both our peoples." He waved one hand and an advisor stepped forward, projecting a holographic document into the air between them. The text was in a language Claire could not read, but her translator implant worked quickly. "The Xanthari bloodline has ruled our empire for 9,000 years, Velon said. But centuries of isolation have weakened our genetics. Our scientists have searched the galaxy for a solution, and they have found one." He paused, his cold eyes settling on Claire. "Humans." Claire kept her face still. "I don't understand. Your species carries unique genetic markers, regenerative properties that could strengthen our royal lineage for generations to come." Velon smiled, but there was no kindness in it. "We require a human female of childbearing age to join our bloodline. She will become a member of the royal family. She will want for nothing." The room went silent. Daniel's hand moved slightly toward his weapon, but Claire gave him a small shake of her head. "You're asking us to give you one of our people," Claire said slowly. "As what? A gift?" "As a contribution to galactic stability. The Xanthari Empire protects 40 star systems. Our strength benefits everyone." Velon gestured to the document again. "In exchange, humanity will receive full membership in the collective. No more probationary status. You will also receive access to our medical technology and our star charts." Claire felt anger building in her chest, but she pushed it down. "Prince Velon, I must refuse. Humans are not property. We do not trade our people, not for technology, not for status, not for anything." The prince's eyes narrowed. "I expected this response. It is why I came prepared." He pointed to a section of the holographic document. "Galactic Law 7742. Any species under probationary membership must comply with requests from established empires when those requests concern genetic preservation and continuation of important bloodlines." "That law was written 3,000 years ago," Claire said, "for species that were dying out. The law does not specify severity, only need." Velon folded his hands behind his back. You have 30 standard days to comply. Select a suitable candidate and deliver her to our embassy on Zenther Prime. If you refuse, humanity will face sanctions, trade restrictions, travel bans, perhaps worse. Claire stepped closer to him. She was shorter than the prince by nearly a foot, but she did not look away. And if we still refuse, then we will take what we need. The collective will not stop us. They never do. He turned and walked toward the door, then paused. I am not without mercy, Ambassador. I have already selected my preferred candidate, a scientist on this very station, Katie Shaw. Our scans show she has a rare genetic mutation that makes her especially valuable. He left without another word. His guards followed, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Daniel moved to Claire's side. Tell me you're not considering this. Of course not. Claire was already moving toward her office. Get me a secure line to Earth and find Katie Shaw. She needs to know what's happening. Dr. Megan Torres caught up with them in the corridor. She had been watching from an observation room. Claire, I ran the prince's claims through our database. The genetic research is real. Humans do have unusual regenerative markers. But there's something else. What? The Xanthari have done this before. 3 other species during their probationary periods. All of them agreed to the demands. Megan's face was grim. Within 2 generations, all 3 species were absorbed into the Empire. They lost their independence completely. Claire stopped walking. The weight of what she was facing pressed down on her shoulders. This was not just about one woman. This was about humanity's future. If they gave in now, they would never be free. Get me that line to Earth, she said, and put the station on alert. I don't trust Velen to wait 30 days. Through the window, she could see the Xanthari ship pulling away from the station. It moved slowly, almost lazily, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. But Claire Bennett had not spent her life protecting her people by giving up easily. The Xanthari wanted a human for their bloodline. They would have to fight for every step. She just hoped humanity was ready for what was coming. Katie Shaw was studying alien flowers when the call came. She was alone in the xenobotany lab, carefully examining a plant from a world 60 light years away. The petals changed color when she touched them, shifting from blue to soft pink. She smiled at the simple beauty of it. Her communicator beeped. Dr. Shaw, please report to the ambassador's office immediately. Katie frowned. She had never spoken to the ambassador directly. Not once in her 3 years on Neptune Station. Something was wrong. She found Claire Bennett waiting with Captain Cole and Dr. Torres. Their faces told her everything she needed to know. This was serious. Please sit down, Dr. Shaw, Claire said gently. I'm afraid I have difficult news. Katie listened as the ambassador explained. The Xanthari prince, the demands, the ancient law, and finally, the truth that made her stomach drop. He wants me specifically? Katie's voice came out smaller than she intended. Your genetic profile contains a mutation that makes you especially valuable to them. Claire leaned forward. But I want you to understand something, Katie. We are not giving you to anyone. Not now. Not ever. Katie's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her legs to steady them. What happens if you refuse? We don't know yet. But whatever happens, you are not a piece of property to be traded. Captain Cole spoke up. We're placing you under protective custody. For your own safety. The Xanthari might try something. Try something? Katie felt fear rising in her chest. You mean take me by force? No one answered. That was answer enough. On Earth, the debate was already tearing governments apart. Senator Laura Kim sat in the United Government Chamber, listening to arguments from every side. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to negotiate. And some, quietly, wanted to give the Centauri what they asked for. The technology they're offering could save millions of lives, one delegate argued. Advanced medicine, faster travel, access to resources we've never seen. All for one person. Admiral Ryan Peters stood up. He was an old man now, but his voice still carried the weight of command. One person today. How many tomorrow? If we show the galaxy that humans can be bought, we will never be free. Every empire, every power, every bully with a fleet will come knocking. Senator Kim raised her hand for silence. Admiral, the Centauri have 300 warships. We have 42. If they decide to take what they want, how do we stop them? We don't stop them, Peters admitted. But we make them pay such a price that no one ever tries it again. The chamber erupted in argument. Kim let them shout for a moment, then called for order. We have 30 days. I suggest we use them wisely. Back on Neptune Station, Claire received a visitor she did not expect. Counselor Zeth was a Valorian, a member of a species that had joined the collective long before humans. He was small, barely 4 feet tall, with large dark eyes and skin that looked like smooth stone. Ambassador Bennett, he said, his voice soft. I come with a warning, unofficially. Claire led him to a private room. I'm listening. The Centauri have done this many times. They find young species still finding their place in the galaxy. They make demands. They offer gifts. And slowly, piece by piece, they consume everything those species were. We know about the 3 species they absorbed. Zeth shook his head. There were 7. The collective records only mentioned 3. The others were erased from history entirely. He looked at Claire with something like sadness. If you give them what they want, you will survive. But you will not remain human. Not in the ways that matter. Claire felt cold. Why are you telling me this? Because I have watched humans for 12 years. You are strange and confusing and sometimes frightening. But you are also brave in ways that older species have forgotten how to be. Zeth moved toward the door. Do not let them take that from you. After he left, Claire contacted Katie. The young scientist was in her quarters, trying to read but unable to focus. Claire could see the fear in her eyes through the video screen. How are you holding up? Claire asked. I keep thinking about what happens if they get me, Katie admitted. What kind of life that would be? A prisoner in a palace. Used for my genetics like some kind of laboratory animal. That's not going to happen. You can't promise that. Katie's voice cracked slightly. Ambassador, if it comes down to a war, people will die. A lot of people. Maybe I should just go. Maybe one life isn't worth. Stop. Claire's voice was firm but kind. Katie, the moment we start calculating human lives like equations, we've already lost. You matter. Not as a resource, not as a bargaining chip, but as a person. That's what being human means. Katie was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, I'll trust you. 2 days later, the first Centauri warships entered human space. There were 12 of them, sleek and deadly, moving in perfect formation. They stopped just outside the defense perimeter around Neptune Station. Prince Velen's face appeared on every screen. Humanity has shown its stubbornness, but stubbornness is not strength. I am exercising our legal right under galactic law to collect genetic material for preservation purposes. Surrender Katie Shaw, and no blood needs to be spilled. Admiral Peters watched the transmission from his flagship, the Defiance. Around him, Earth's entire fleet was mobilizing. 42 ships against 12 might seem like good odds. But the Centauri ships were larger, faster, and carried weapons humanity had no defense against. Send word to the station, Peters ordered. Tell them to hold tight. We're coming. Commander Beth Lawson, captain of the Defiance, looked at the tactical display. The numbers were not good. "Admiral, you know we can't win this fight." Peters nodded slowly. "I know, but sometimes you fight anyway. Sometimes you fight because running isn't an option." On Neptune Station, Katie stood at a window, watching the distant lights of the Centauri fleet. Daniel Cole stood beside her. "We won't let them take you," he said quietly. Katie looked at him. "What if you can't stop them?" Daniel was silent for a moment. Then he put a hand on her shoulder. "Then we'll make sure they remember the cost. That's all any of us can do." The stars seemed very cold that night. But somewhere in the darkness, humanity was gathering. Small and young and outgunned, ready to fight for one of their own. The standoff lasted 3 days. 3 days of silence. 3 days of waiting. 3 days of watching the Centauri warships hang in the darkness like wolves circling a wounded animal. Commander Beth Lawson had positioned her small fleet between the station and the enemy. It was a defensive formation, designed to buy time rather than win battles. Everyone knew what would happen if shooting started. But no one moved. No one blinked. On the 4th day, Claire Bennett made her move. She stood in the station's main communication center, surrounded by screens and equipment. Dr. Torres worked beside her, setting up a broadcast that would reach every corner of the Galactic Collective. Every species, every world, everyone who cared to listen. "Are you sure about this?" Daniel asked. He stood by the door, watching for trouble. "No," Claire admitted. "But we're out of options. If this is going to end badly, I want the whole galaxy to see it." The signal went live. Claire looked into the camera and began to speak. "My name is Claire Bennett. I am the human ambassador to the Galactic Collective. I am speaking to you from Neptune Station, where 12 Centauri warships are currently threatening my people." She paused, letting the words sink in across thousands of light years. "Prince Velen of the Centauri Empire has demanded that we surrender one of our citizens, a young woman named Katie Shaw. He claims an ancient law gives him the right to take her against her will, to use her for his bloodline, to treat her as property." Claire's voice grew stronger. "We have refused. We will continue to refuse. Not because we are brave, not because we are strong, but because we believe that every person has value. Every life has meaning. And no law, no matter how old, can make slavery acceptable." She looked directly into the camera. "I am asking the collective to witness what happens next. If the Centauri take Katie Shaw by force, let the galaxy see it. Let history record it. And let every species ask themselves a simple question. If this can happen to humanity, who will be next?" The transmission ended. Claire stood in silence, her heart pounding. Across the galaxy, reactions came quickly. The Valorians expressed support. The Keth Federation called for calm. 12 minor species issued statements condemning the Centauri actions. It was not much, but it was something. On the Centauri flagship, Prince Velen watched the broadcast with growing anger. His advisor, a thin creature named Prelate Sorth, stood beside him. "The humans are making us look like villains," Sorth said quietly. "They are insects," Velen snapped. "Their opinions mean nothing. Their opinions are spreading. Other species are watching." Velen turned away from the screen. "Damn, we end this quickly. Prepare the assault craft. We take the woman tonight." But not everyone on the Centauri ship agreed with the prince. High Priest Morith had served the royal family for 200 years. He had blessed births and mourned deaths. He had watched princes become kings and kings become legends. And he had never seen anything like this. He found Velen in the command chamber, studying tactical displays. "Your Highness, may I speak freely?" Velen did not look up. "Quickly, Morth. I am busy. This is not honorable." The old priest's voice was gentle but firm. "We are the Centauri. We build an empire on strength and wisdom, not on taking unwilling brides from weaker species. Honor is a luxury. Velen finally turned to face him. The bloodline is weakening. I am doing what must be done. Are you? Or are you simply taking what you want because you can? For a moment, something flickered in Velen's eyes. Doubt, perhaps. Or anger. Then it was gone, replaced by cold certainty. Launch the assault craft, Morith. That is an order. On Neptune Station, alarms began to wail. Daniel Cole ran to the tactical center, where screens showed a dozen small craft separating from the Zentari fleet. They're coming, Lieutenant Kevin Park announced. He was young, barely 25, but his voice was steady. Assault shuttles. 16 of them. They'll reach us in 8 minutes. Claire arrived moments later. Where's Katie? Safe room on deck 7. 4 guards with her. Make it 8. Claire turned to the screens. The assault craft were moving fast, their weapons already powering up. And get me a line to Commander Lawson. Beth Lawson's face appeared on screen. Behind her, the bridge of the Defiance was controlled chaos. Ambassador, we're moving to intercept, but we can't stop all of them. I know. Do what you can, Ambassador. Lawson hesitated. If they get through, if they take your station, we'll have to fall back. We can't risk the whole fleet. Claire nodded. She had expected this. Understood, Commander. Fight well. The line cut. Claire stood alone for a moment, feeling the weight of what was coming. Then Katie's voice came through the intercom. Ambassador Bennett? I want to speak to you. Claire made her way to deck 7. The safe room was small, but heavily armored. Katie sat inside, surrounded by guards who looked ready to fight to the death. I've been thinking, Katie said, about what you told me, about how one life isn't worth a war. Katie, don't. Please, let me finish. The young woman's eyes were red from crying, but her voice was calm. I don't want people to die for me. I really don't. But I understand now why you're fighting. It's not about me. It's about what kind of species we want to be. Claire knelt beside her. You understand. If we give them what they want, we lose ourselves. We become something smaller. Katie took a shaky breath. So I'm not going to volunteer anymore. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust all of us. Before Claire could respond, the station shook. Weapons fire. The Zentari assault had begun. Daniel's voice came through the communicator. They're hitting the outer hull. Commander Lawson is engaging, but 3 shuttles got through. Hold them as long as you can. Claire stood, squeezing Katie's hand once. I have to go. She ran back to the command center. Through the windows, she could see flashes of light as ships exchanged fire. The Defiance was dancing between Zentari cruisers, taking hits but still fighting. 2 other human ships were burning, their crews already evacuating Dodden. On the edge of the sensor display, something new appeared. Ships. Many ships. Coming fast from the inner system. Admiral Peters, Daniel said, his voice breaking with relief. He brought everything. 40 human warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, forming a wall between the station and the Zentari fleet. They were still outgunned. They were still outmatched. But they were there. Admiral Peters' voice filled the communication channel. Prince Velen, this is Admiral Ryan Peters of Earth's United Fleet. You are ordered to withdraw your forces immediately. Velen's response was cold. You cannot win this fight, Admiral. Maybe not. Peters' voice did not waver. But we can make you pay a price you'll never forget. Your choice, Prince. The assault craft stopped their approach. The Zentari fleet held position. For one long, terrible moment, the universe held its breath. Then the shooting stopped. No one had won. But no one had lost either. Not yet. The standoff continued. But now the whole galaxy was watching, and humanity had shown what they were willing to die for. Dr. Adam Chun had been studying the Xanthari genetic data for 6 straight days. He was a xenogeneticist, one of the best in human space, and something about the prince's claims had been bothering him from the beginning. Now, staring at his screens in the station's medical lab, he finally understood why. He called Claire immediately. "Ambassador, I found something. You need to see this." Claire arrived with Daniel and Dr. Torres. They gathered around Chun's workstation as he pulled up his analysis. "The Xanthari claim their bloodline is dying," Chun began. "Weakening genetics, failing immune systems, reduced fertility. That's what Vellern told us. And?" Claire leaned closer. "It's not true." Chun pointed to a series of graphs. "I compared their data to their historical medical records. Records they shared with the collective centuries ago. The royal bloodline is stable. Maybe even stronger than it was 1,000 years ago." Daniel frowned. "They lied? The data was manipulated. Someone changed the numbers to make it look like there was a crisis." Chun shook his head. "This isn't about genetic preservation. It never was." Claire felt a cold anger building in her chest. "Then, what is it about?" Before Chun could answer, a communication request came through. The source was encrypted, hidden, but marked urgent. Claire accepted it. A face appeared on screen. A Xanthari woman with features similar to Vellern's, but softer. Her eyes held none of his coldness. If anything, she looked tired, sad. "Ambassador Bennett," she said quietly. "My name is Princess Sayla. I am Vellern's sister. I am contacting you at great personal risk, but I cannot stay silent any longer." Claire glanced at Daniel, then back at the screen. "I'm listening. My brother is not acting on behalf of our empire. Our father, Emperor Kalthos, authorized only diplomatic contact, negotiation. Vellern was supposed to propose a partnership, not issue demands. A partnership for what? Cultural exchange. Our father has grown concerned that our people have become too isolated, too arrogant. He hoped that working with a young, energetic species like humanity might help us remember who we once were." Sayla's voice dropped. But Vellern saw an opportunity. He manipulated the genetic data. He created a false crisis. He believes that if he returns with a human bride, our father will have no choice but to accept his actions and reward him for his initiative. Claire's hands tightened into fists. "Your brother is willing to start a war just to impress your father? You must understand. Vellern is the third son. He will never rule. He has spent his entire life trying to prove he deserves more." Sayla looked away from the camera. "I am not excusing him. What he is doing is wrong. I am only explaining. Can you prove any of this? I have copies of my father's original orders. I have the unaltered genetic data. And I am willing to testify to the truth if you can arrange communication with my father." Claire thought quickly. Direct contact with Emperor Kalthos would change everything. It would expose Vellern's lies. It would turn this from a human problem into a Xanthari scandal. But it was also incredibly dangerous. "Daniel," she said, "get me Admiral Peters. And prepare a diplomatic channel to the Xanthari flagship. We're calling the Emperor." Aboard the Xanthari flagship, Vellern received the request with suspicion. Ambassador Bennett was invoking ancient royal protocol, demanding a direct audience with Emperor Kalthos. It was technically his right to refuse, but doing so would look like he had something to hide. "Accepted," he told his communications officer. "I will speak with my father and explain that the humans are desperate." The connection took time to establish. The Xanthari homeworld was far away, and the signal had to pass through dozens of relay stations. But eventually, Emperor Kalthos appeared on screen. He was old. Much older than Vellern. His skin was pale blue fading to gray, and his eyes held the weight of centuries. But his voice was still strong. "Vellern, Ambassador Bennett, I have been following these events with growing concern." Claire bowed her head respectfully. "Emperor Kalthos, thank you for speaking with us. I must share information that I believe you have not received." Vellern interrupted. "Father, the humans are simply trying to silence Vellern." The Emperor's voice cut like ice. "You will speak when I ask you to." "Ambassador, continue." Claire took a deep breath. "Your Highness, we have analyzed the genetic data your son presented. The claims of bloodline degradation are false. The data was altered to create a crisis that does not exist." Vellern laughed nervously. "This is absurd. Human technology cannot possibly. I also have testimony from a member of your own royal family." Claire nodded to her communications officer. A moment later, Princess Sayla appeared on a split screen. The Emperor's expression changed. Something shifted in his ancient eyes. "Sayla, what is the meaning of this?" "Father." Sayla's voice was steady despite her obvious fear. "Vellern altered the genetic records. Your original orders were for peaceful contact only. He has acted without authorization, threatened a species under collective protection, and brought dishonor to our house." The silence that followed was terrible. Vellern's face had gone pale. His advisors stepped away from him as if he had become contagious. Emperor Kalthos spoke slowly. "Vellern, is this true?" "Father, I did what was necessary. The humans are primitive. They would never have agreed to. Is this true?" Vellern's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. His silence was answer enough. Claire stepped forward slightly. "Emperor Kalthos, one more person wishes to speak." Katie Shaw appeared on screen. She had insisted on being part of this. Claire had tried to protect her, but Katie had refused to stay hidden. "Your Majesty," Katie said, her voice clear despite her fear. "I am the woman your son wanted to take. He called me a genetic resource, a tool for your bloodline. But I am not a tool. I am a person. I have dreams and hopes and people who love me." She paused, steadying herself. "Humanity is young. We make mistakes. We fight and argue, and sometimes we fail. But we know one thing with absolute certainty. Every person has value. Every life matters. Not because of what they can give you, but because of who they are." Katie looked directly at the camera. "I don't hate your son. I don't hate your empire. But I will never accept being treated as property. No human ever will." Emperor Kalthos was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. "Ambassador Bennett, Dr. Shaw, on behalf of the Xanthari Empire, I apologize." He turned to face his son. "Vellern, you have brought disgrace upon our house. You have twisted my words and betrayed my trust. You are hereby stripped of your titles and sentenced to exile. You will spend the remainder of your days in contemplation of what you have done." Vellern's face twisted with rage. "Father, you cannot. Remove him." Guards appeared on the flagship's bridge. They took the prince by his arms and led him away. He did not go quietly, but he went. Claire felt the tension in her shoulders slowly releasing. It was over. Almost over. "Ambassador," the Emperor said, "I believe we have much to discuss. Not demands this time. A genuine offer. If you are willing to listen." Claire nodded slowly. "We're listening." For the first time since this nightmare began, she allowed herself to hope. The negotiations lasted 2 weeks. 2 weeks of careful discussions, of proposals and counter-proposals, of building something new from the ashes of what had almost been war. Emperor Kalthos proved to be nothing like his son. He was patient, thoughtful, and genuinely curious about humanity. Claire stood in the diplomatic chamber aboard the Xanthari flagship. reading the final agreement. It was nothing like what Velorn had demanded. No forced marriages. No genetic harvesting. No treating humans as resources. Instead, there was partnership. A cultural exchange program, Claire said, looking up at the Emperor's holographic image. Your people will come to our worlds. Our people will visit yours. We learn from each other. Correct. Kalthos nodded slowly. I have watched humanity these past weeks, Ambassador. You are young and sometimes reckless. But you have something my people lost long ago. What's that? Fire. The old Emperor almost smiled. We built an empire, but somewhere along the way, we forgot why. We became caretakers of power rather than seekers of meaning. Perhaps your people can remind us. Claire set down the document. I accept these terms on behalf of humanity. In the days that followed, the Zentari fleet withdrew from human space. The warships that had threatened destruction now departed peacefully, their weapons silent. Admiral Peters watched them go from the bridge of the Defiance. Commander Lawson stood beside him. I never thought I'd see the day. Neither did I. Peters allowed himself a small smile. We got lucky. If that princess hadn't come forward, if the Emperor had been different, but they weren't, and we didn't give up. Lawson looked at the Admiral. That counts for something. It counts for everything. Back on Neptune Station, Katie Shaw faced a choice she had never expected. Princess Sayla had come in person to deliver the invitation. The Zentari wanted Katie to be the first human cultural ambassador to their homeworld. You would live among us, Sayla explained. Not as a prisoner, not as a resource. As a guest. A teacher. You would help our people understand yours, and in return, you would learn about us. Katie sat in the station's observation lounge, looking out at the stars. I don't know. After everything that happened, I understand your hesitation. Sayla sat beside her. My brother treated you as an object. Many of my people would have done the same, but not all of us. And the only way things change is if someone is brave enough to take the first step, brave or stupid. Sayla laughed softly. It was a surprising sound, warm and genuine. In my experience, the two are often the same thing. Katie thought about it for a long time. She thought about the fear she had felt, the certainty that she would be taken against her will. She thought about Claire's refusal to give up, about the fleet that had come to protect her, about all the people who had risked everything for one person. She thought about what Sayla had said. Someone has to take the first step. Okay, Katie said finally. I'll do it. But I have conditions. Name them. I go where I want. I speak to whoever I want. No guards following me. No restrictions on my movement. Katie met Sayla's eyes. And if I decide to come home, you let me go. No arguments. Sayla nodded. Agreed. All of it. 3 months later, Katie stood in a garden on the Zentari homeworld. The plants were strange and beautiful, nothing like the flowers she had studied on Neptune Station. But she was learning their names, their properties, their stories. Just as she was learning the names and stories of the people around her, she taught classes to young Zentari students. She told them about Earth, about human history, about art and music and the strange ways her people expressed love and joy and sorrow. Some students were suspicious at first. Some were openly hostile. But slowly, carefully, walls began to come down. Emperor Kalthos visited her one evening as the twin suns were setting. He walked slowly, leaning on his staff, but his eyes were sharp. Dr. Shaw, may I join you? Of course, Your Majesty. They sat together on a bench carved from crystal, watching the sky turn colors that had no names in human languages. I owe you an apology, Kalthos said quietly. Not just for my son's actions, but for my own failures. I should have seen what he was becoming. I should have stopped him long ago. Katie considered her response carefully. I'm not sure any parent can control who their children become. You can guide them, teach them, but in the end, they make their own choices. A generous interpretation. A human one. Katie smiled slightly. We're big on second chances. Kalthos was silent for a moment. Then he spoke again, his voice thoughtful. When I first heard about humanity, I thought you were insignificant. A minor species on the edge of explored space. Nothing special. And now? Now, I think you may be the most interesting species my people have ever encountered. The old emperor turned to look at her. Not because of your genetics or your technology. Those are ordinary. But your spirit. He shook his head slowly. You would rather die than give up one of your own. You would face annihilation rather than compromise your principles. That is not ordinary. That is remarkable. Katie felt warmth spreading through her chest. Not pride exactly, but something close to it. That's just what humans do. We're stubborn. No. Kalthos rose slowly to his feet. That is what brave people do. And bravery, I have learned, is something that cannot be bred or bought or stolen. It can only be chosen. He bowed his head to her, a gesture of profound respect, and walked away into the garden far across the galaxy. The Galactic Collective was changing too. The standoff at Neptune Station had become famous. Species who had been silent for centuries were now speaking up. A new amendment was being proposed. No species could be compelled to surrender citizens against their will, regardless of membership status or ancient laws. Ambassador Claire Bennett addressed the collective assembly in person. She spoke of dignity, of freedom, of the belief that every person had value beyond what they could provide. The vote passed by an overwhelming margin. That night, Claire called Katie through a long-range communication link. The delay was nearly a minute between messages, but neither of them minded. You did it, Katie said, her face bright with joy. You actually changed galactic law. We did it. Claire's smile was tired but genuine. All of us. You especially. I just refuse to be a victim. Refuse to be a victim. That's not heroic. It is exactly heroic. Claire leaned closer to the camera. Katie, a year ago, we were a minor species that no one took seriously. Now we've shown the galaxy what humanity stands for. And we did it without firing a shot. Katie laughed. Well, there were a few shots. Those don't count. Warning shots only. They talked for another hour, sharing stories, making plans. When the connection finally ended, Katie stepped back out into the Zentari garden. The night sky was filled with unfamiliar stars, but she was beginning to learn their names too. She was far from home, far from everything she had known. But she was exactly where she needed to be, somewhere out there. Humanity was still reaching, still growing, still proving that the smallest voices could shake the largest empires. Not through force, not through fear, but through the simple, stubborn belief that every person mattered. And that, Katie thought, was something worth fighting for. Always.